In the night he calls to me, as a father calls to his son. With glorious purpose I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am, send me." Others look upon me with confusion and disbelief. "Why go?" they ask. I must bear witness, even if it makes me blind. I will be his blind witness. I have no wings, so I can't fly. Instead, I will climb the highest mountain to touch the sky. At midnight we ascend, wind on my back, gurgles in my stomach, and pain in my leg, powerful enough to incapacitate a heretic. But I am no heretic. I am a follower of Jesus Christ. My feet won't fail me now, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. The Holy Spirit guides me, for even if I was blind and she was deaf, we would find our way to each other. Dogs by my side and cats on my lap, they stay with me and give me the courage not to turn back. After a moment of rest and a sip of tea, my pain washes away, for he is with me. I reach the summit at daybreak and stare into the rising sun. You gave me brown eyes so I can see, together at last, you and me. For this is what life is all about. It is the uncrossed desert and the unclimbed ridge. It is the star that is not reached and the harvest that is sleeping in the unplowed ground. Is my world gone? I say farewell. Is a new world coming? I welcome it, and I will bend it to the hopes of man. But why climb Mount Sinai? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain at midnight? Why 1 year ago traverse India? Why climb without the rope? We choose to climb Mount Sinai. We choose to reach the summit in the darkness and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to conquer. It's frigid in Sinai, and the bush is burning. I'm your host, Negative Nick, and this is the No Good News Podcast. Whew! Man, was that an adventure, climbing Mount Sinai, midnight till 6 in the morning for sunrise. It was a very, very challenging, biblical, and deeply connecting experience that I had. The reason I decided to go to Egypt, which is where, for those of you who don't know, Mount Sinai is in Egypt. If it were up to Israel, it wouldn't be. But right now, the way things are going, Egypt does own Sinai after the October 6th war. Not to be confused with October 7th, which is when Hamas attacked Israel. Different wars, very similar dates. Where was I with that? Oh, yeah. So the reason I wanted to go to Egypt was because I wanted to climb Mount Sinai. I think it'd be really powerful if, in order, I start by climbing Mount Sinai, which is the mountain that Moses climbed to get the 10 Commandments, obviously. And at the top, we saw his cave. It's nothing crazy, but it'll certainly keep a man warm. The winds up there were fierce winds, and my nose was numb. I felt like it was just gonna fall off. The cave did help out. It's like they built a railing on it now, but you can tell that in the past it was just kind of like carved down into the stone. But I think it'd be great if I do Mount Sinai first, which I have now done, and I follow that with Mount Nebo, which is in Jordan. That is the mountain that Moses climbed. So, the second mountain. That's how they did scouting back in the day. That's the mountain he climbed, and from there he could see the promised land. He could see Israel. And then Moses tells his followers that they are near the promised land, but he will not make it there with them. And then Moses passes away. Because he lived a very long life. So I would like to do Mount Nebo in Jordan second, so presumably within the next few years. And then I would like to follow that up with obviously going to Israel. So it'd be really great if I did it in order. And I think that's something very few people get to experience. But I feel like that is probably the right way to do it. So It was great. I mean, we arrive, so I think it was a 10-hour drive. I'm pretty close. It's a 10-hour drive from Cairo, Egypt, out there to Mount Sinai. And we left early in the morning, very, very early in the morning. And we arrived at approximately 6 p.m., approximately. We're all beat. And our tour guide, named Muhammad, great guy. And for the rest of the episode, I might call him Muhammad. I might also call him Mo, just M-O, because that's what he told us to call him. So Mo told us to go to the hotel room, to go to our room, and to sleep and to rest. And then we would wake up, we would eat dinner, and then we would begin the climb at midnight. So we have to rest. So we arrive late afternoon. It's very cold in Sinai. And I want to take a moment and talk about this hotel that we're at. And I guess I'm going to have to give some more context about, the country of Egypt as a whole. So in Egypt, the government subsidizes gasoline. And because of that, it's just extremely cheap. So if you actually do the conversion, not only the currency conversion from Egyptian pounds to USD, but then on top of that, you do the secondary conversion of liters to gallons, because whenever you buy gasoline there, it's in liters. So after you do currency conversion and then liters to gallons, you'll come up with the following number. A gallon of gasoline in Egypt is $1.40. So, now, Egypt is a third world poor country, but that still doesn't necessarily explain why gasoline is so cheap, because the Dominican Republic is also poorer than Egypt. As we discussed last episode, their gasoline is over $4 a gallon. So there's obviously a lot more to it, but the truth of the matter is the government sets the price for gasoline across the whole country. And I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong about this, but I believe this is common in oil states and in the Middle East. I mean, the United States, we may be the only oil state that doesn't just set gasoline prices. So we get gasoline on this long drive, and we're driving into town. And no, I'm skipping ahead too much. I want to first talk about going under the Suez Canal. So the Suez Canal is the border between Africa and Asia. And this canal was made by the French and maintained by the British, or owned by the British, whatever term you want to use. And this canal connects the Mediterranean Sea in the north to the Red Sea in the south. And there's a tunnel under that canal, so you can cross by car. So we cross under the Suez Canal, and then there's a border checkpoint. Because now we're in Sinai, and Sinai is a militarily occupied peninsula, and it is hostile territory. It's seen as a buffer zone between Israel and, Gaza, and then the rest of Egypt. So Sinai is that middle zone. And it is the only land crossing from Africa into Asia. It's the only border crossing. And this was a fascinating situation to be in. So our tour guide, Muhammad, turns around to us in the van, and he says, "All right, we're gonna stop. We're gonna need your passports, and I have to go talk to the guards." Come to find out that there's like a ton of paperwork, and given that we're Americans, that's an extra liability for Egypt, because, I mean, I don't know this to be true, but I'm pretty certain that this is true. If we as Americans get hurt in Sinai by Palestinians or terrorists or whatever, the United States will single-handedly carpet bomb all of Egypt. They take our security as Americans very serious. And I asked Mo, and I said, do they do this for any other nationalities? And he was like, no, just for Americans. So in the car, after we cross through the border checkpoint, they're calling him, every hour, every 45 minutes, just to check in and make sure that we're all good. Remember, we still have 6 hours of the drive left. And on the way back to Cairo, as we left Mount Sinai, about 30 hours later, we had a military vehicle escort us most of the way. Even though Sinai is like, I would say, totally safe. I mean, yeah, you're like 100 miles from Gaza, but I mean, it's so heavily militarily occupied. There's very few highways. As we drove south to Mount Sinai, we saw the Red Sea to our right because we were driving south. So the Red Sea was on our right-hand side, and on our left-hand side is these gnarly mountains. They have like a unique bulbous shape. They're like very jagged on the sides, but a lot of them have like rounded tops. It's very, very interesting. I've got some photos that I can show you later, producer. And it was geographical formations I'd never seen before. Usually mountains that are that extreme and that elevate that quickly, they usually have pointed, like very sharp tips. But these were like kind of rounded at the top. I thought it was very interesting. There's black sand everywhere, and that is like the remnants of like volcanic ash from who knows how long ago. So there's black sand. There is very tall mountains. We're driving through ravines or canyons, whatever term it is, between these mountains. And as we're driving in the middle of the desert, you'll see like patches of life, like patches of grass and trees. And these are little oases. It's where there's water underground, and the trees have taken root, and their roots are deep enough to tap into that groundwater. So it's very much, and an oasis is a very fascinating and special thing. We saw more of these oases later in the trip when we were in the Sahara Desert. So I'll get to that later. So we cross over the border, tons of security. The geographical formations are incredible. We arrive in town, and there's really nothing there. Like no one lives there. There's a ton of hotels, lots of hotels. And according to our tour guide, this is peak season. This is peak season to go to Mount Sinai, according to him. Despite this, our hotel was empty. There's maybe 8 buildings. Each building has 20 rooms, and we were the only people in our entire building. And later that night, when I went to dinner, there was maybe 20 people in the dinner hall. So it's this huge hotel, and it's vacant. And all the other hotels that we passed, they looked vacant as well, like no cars in the lot or anything. So it was so strange that this entire town was like a ghost town. But that happens in socialist economies. The government kind of pumps money into different sectors, and they misallocate resources. Like there doesn't need to be 10 hotels in that town, to climb Mount Sinai. I mean, even as we were climbing, we barely came across anyone. But it's more like the government just kind of gives out grants, and then people, build their little hotel. The hotel was nice, like it did the trick. We had 3 twin beds and a nice bathroom. The shower was a little small, but we actually didn't shower during our stay because we arrived at 6 p.m., went to sleep, woke up, did the hike, came back from the hike, packed up our stuff, and 30 minutes, we got back to the hotel, and within 30 minutes, we were on the road back home. So there was really no time to shower. The water pressure was good. There was Wi-Fi, which is very surprising. I thought that was really, really, really cool. And I was unexpected. And you actually see the massive cell towers as you're driving along the highway. They just basically follow the highway because most of Sinai is uninhabited. The terrain is too harsh, we'll say. And then we drive to this mountain. It is freezing cold out. I'm wearing this, I guess I could call it a parka, or poncho. Poncho is probably more accurate. I'm wearing like this poncho, and it's made of wool, and it says Sinai on it on my shoulder in like a white sleeve, and I've got like a purple stripe. It was really, really cool. It looked like something you would buy in like Peru, but I'm obviously in Egypt. So I buy this poncho, I buy some gloves, I layer up, and we begin the climb. Now I was wearing jeans, which in hindsight was not the best because it would have been nice if I had 2 layers, but I was wearing 2 shirts, then the poncho on top of it. Well, actually, 2 shirts. So t-shirt, then long sleeve shirt, then jacket, my Dosh King New Jersey jacket, and then on top of that, the poncho. So my upper body was fine. In fact, during the hike, I was like sweating. So I knew I was doing good there, but my legs, it was just jeans, one layer. I was wearing some T-shoes, I was wearing some sneakers. And then I had a red scarf around my neck. I tell you all this because it was absolutely freezing cold. I mean, at the base of the mountain, it was already cold, but as you climb and the wind starts hitting, I mean, it was powerful wind, man. And throughout the climb, my leg, as a result of my car accident many years ago, my leg gets like really inflamed if I'm doing like strenuous hikes. Walking around day to day, no problem. I mean, this was like my first flare up in like 2 years, but that's just because of how strenuous this was. And my leg was like numb from the pain. I also think the cold contributed to that, I think. But and I also had to use the bathroom so bad. So our tour guide, we got a delicious lunch. The lunch was huge. So the way a meal works in Egypt is you sit down and right away, like on cue, they bring out bread, which I was not really a fan of, but I know others in my group did enjoy it. They bring out bread, hummus, all sorts of dips. So they bring out like 5 dips and bread. The dips are really tasty. And that's free, by the way, totally free. Every time you sit down and eat, they give you bread and like dips for free. Then they bring out salad. The salad is always the same. It is cucumbers and tomatoes, which they grow in Egypt. And it's still tasty, and they put some olive oil. They put some olive oil on it. They grow a lot of olives down there in Egypt. So I was always a huge fan of the salad, and I would occasionally dunk like some cucumber into the hummus or whatever. Then they bring you a soup. As you eat the soup, once again, the soup usually included in this kind of meal. So you got the bread, the salad, and the soup. You didn't even order yet.
Yeah, you're full already.
I know, you're getting full, exactly. Then they bring out the food. The food is this thing called kofta. So at this joint, there was 2 options, chicken or kofta. Kofta is like a skewer. It's like a kebab. Think of it that way. It's like a piece of like minced meat, and it's like shaped with seasonings, and it's got a hole through it because they cook it on a wooden stick. And it's delicious. I love kofta. I was getting it all the time on my trip. Now, I'm not sure what exactly... and we had a pot of tomato soup with vegetables in it. Also delicious. There was so much food we couldn't even finish. And there's, you know what, knowing them, there's something else too that I'm forgetting. In Egypt, you're always well fed. Always. It's great. And every meal comes with free mint tea at the end of the meal. And free water at the beginning of the meal. So all that's just built into the price of your entree, but even still, the entrees are very, very cheap, to the point where you like kind of feel like you're getting away with it, like you're getting away with something. So this meal was so huge that it was upsetting my stomach. And we went to Mount Sinai very early into our trip. I think it was like the 3rd day, the 4th day. So my body, myself and my 2 friends that I was with, our bodies hadn't adjusted to the spice blend. One person in particular was in the bathroom. So one of the guys in our crew, the joke was that he was in the bathroom like 1/3 of the time we were in Egypt. I mean, he was laying it down like 5 times a day at least. I really felt bad for him. I mean, he told I told him, and this happened to me too, but I know it happened for him. I was like, dude, I know your asshole is tender. Like, because it was getting a serious workout. I mean, you can only take a shit so many times in a day before you're begging for mercy, So the spice blend, our bodies weren't ready for it. So, and when we start to climb, my stomach is gurgling. Powerful gurgles. Powerful. At the base of the mountain, there's a bunch of wild dogs, okay? And these guys, they don't bite. They're very polite and they're very kind, and they follow us. 2 of them in particular, 2 dogs, followed us for the 5.5-hour hike up the mountain. Hung out with us on rest stops, and like, they may not always be directly next to you, however, that was common, but what they will do is they'll always be nearby. Like if you like take a rest or something, like they're always watching you. They're always nearby. And there's a few rest stops as you climb the mountain, and there's always a cat or 2 in the rest stops. And the cats, I don't know why it was, but they kept coming over to me, even all throughout my trip in Egypt, but especially on 2 occasions climbing the mountain. The cats come over and they sit on my lap and they just hang out there. And I'm allergic to cats, but you know, I didn't really do anything because my nose was so numb that I was having no reaction because I couldn't even breathe in. Like my nose just wasn't operable. And that was within like the first 45 minutes of the hike. We had water. So in my backpack, I had some hand towels, like some Purell, like some hand sanitizer, and some water. In hindsight, I should have also brought a snack. I didn't do that. But that's okay because we got some tea at the rest stop. And with my gurgles, I wasn't really in the situation to eat anyways. Now, most of the ascent is a gradual incline, like if you were going to push something up a ramp. But once you get about 2/3 of the way through, the elevation gets real severe. And they call this part of the path, they call this part of the hike, the steps of repentance. That's what they call this part of the trail. So there's 2 segments to the ascent. The first segment is more gradual. They call that camel path. And they call it camel path because you can ride a camel up it or down it because the slopes are gradual. Then at the end of camel path, there is the steps of repentance. And that is a workout. That's crazy. I mean, if I wasn't a young man, if I wasn't a spring chicken, that'd be very hard to do. And even with my leg pain, it was very challenging. But it was an incredible experience. The winds were strong. I had great conversation with my crew, especially with Mo. Mo is a little bit older. He's 28 or 29. So unlike the other guys in our crew that were, you know, doing well at the front, I was hanging out in the back. I was the caboose of the operation because of my leg pain. And Mo, you know, he's a chronic smoker. And a vapor, hookah, smoke, all sorts of lung problems, all sorts of substances. So he was breathing really heavy. So him and I were hanging out in the back. That's another thing I want to talk about in Egypt. From a young age, like 6 years old, 6, 7 years old, we'd be walking down the street, you see young kids smoking cigarettes. And what happens is they get this thing called a sig tooth. A sig tooth is when you're smoking from a young age, when your adult teeth grow in, one of them grows further than the other. So the front tooth that's shorter is a natural slot for a cigarette. And I know that sounds crazy, but now that I've told you that, if you ever go to one of these developing countries where lots of people smoke, you will notice it on people that have been smoking their whole lives, how they have a sig tooth. So whenever they smoke, they can close their mouth. Their mouth can remain closed while they have a cigarette in it. Where like usually if you have a cigarette in your mouth, you kind of like have to keep a gap like between your teeth, but these people, they don't have to. They could close their bite because they have that slot for the cigarette. I know. So little kids, 6, 7 years old. So Mo not only smoked a lot of cigarettes, but he also vaped and he liked to do shisha or hookah, whatever you want to call it. So, and, you know, God bless, whatever. But we're in the back of the group, you know, climbing up. Incredible experience. Love the wind, love the dogs, love the cats. You get to the top. Sunrise was beautiful. I looked into the sun. I've never done that before, but it was gorgeous. And I knew it'd be safe. I mean, you could look at the sunrise and at the sunset. And then on the way down the mountain, we got some camels, and we rode for like an hour, maybe more than an hour, down the mountain on camel path, on mounting some camels, which was great. Now, I had a good time with the camels, and so did one of the other guys in the crew. But the one of us, the third guy in the back, my brother actually. So my brother in the back of the group, his shepherd, I'll use the word shepherd, the guy who leads the camel, was a child. And that's important because the child didn't really know how to, guide the camel, you could say. So my brother had a very turbulent experience, major wedgie. He was telling me that like his balls were in his stomach, like the pain was that bad. Mine were too. I mean, it's tough going down those hills. Like riding a camel is not a smooth experience. it was much more turbulent than I expected. But like when the camel steps down and then like its back legs like jump, like you feel that, like it rocks you, you know, and like it really hurts your groin. So, but you know, after a while, you just go numb down there from the pain, and then you reach and then you reach the bottom. But it was still a very serene experience. Really enjoyed Mount Sinai, and I was called to go to Egypt to obviously, to obviously climb the mountains. That was the reason we went. And it was a 10-hour drive there. Then we climbed through the night, and then a 10-hour drive home. So it was a very quick turnaround. The hotel was totally desolate, like I said, and the joke in our group throughout the entire trip was that we basically fund the entire GDP of Egypt. I mean, you'd go to restaurants, hotels, all sorts of places, and they're just vacant. Like we're the only people there. It's like we fund the whole operation. But that's good, because when you're the only customer, you're a very valued customer. So they always take care of you, whatever you need. Had an excellent time. The people of Egypt are incredible. I mean, they've got a very nice Mediterranean culture that, that I have not experienced, because I've never actually been to the Mediterranean. I've never been to Italy, for example. I've never been to Greece, for example. So, it was nice to, get that experience. And culturally, Egypt does have many similarities to Italian culture. I mean, the essence of being Italian is that everyone wants to be like you. Everyone wants to be in your crew. The Irish, they want to be Italian. The Jews, they pretend to be Italian. But that's because as Italians, we have this effortless swagger, and we got delicious food. So everybody wants to be like us. And I witness this firsthand all the time. Well, who would have thought that even when an Italian goes to Egypt and an Italian meets Pharaoh, even in Egypt, the Egyptians want to be Italian. But they want to be Italian so bad that they don't even know it out there in Egypt. They want to be like me, but they haven't recognized that reality yet. So many people, I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, over 100 people throughout my trip in Egypt thought I was Egyptian. People would start conversations with me in Egypt. I had like women giving me eyes, like they thought I was one of them. And it was really, really interesting, because I've never had anyone tell me I look Egyptian. But then walking among the country, people think I'm Egyptian. And it's not like, oh, they're just trying to sell you something, like, oh, they're just trying to grease you. No, that was not the case. Like just strangers on the street, other tourists, people thought I was Egyptian. The police, like armed guards, they would start conversations with me in Arabic. But when speaking to my brother or my friend, they would talk in English, or they wouldn't talk at all, because they would just assume that they don't know Arabic. But people would start conversations with me in Arabic. They thought I was English. So even in Egypt, as an Italian, they so desperately want to see themselves within me. And that was really, really interesting. Really enjoyed that dynamic throughout the entire trip. People come to me. I walk into the hotel one day after I forget where we were coming back from, but I walk into our hotel in Cairo, and the whole crew of 8 people, the manager, the girls behind the desk, the security, all of them, the taxi driver, they all stand up. They all surround me like a pack of wolves. And the taxi driver touching my face, Habibi, you look Egyptian. Please drink tea with me. Touching my face. They're very touchy over there in Egypt. So everybody thought I was Egyptian for the whole trip. Really thought it was, I thought it was great. To be honest with you, I really enjoyed it. But but the truth is they just want to be Italian. That's all it is. So, Egypt, Egypt is Egypt is kind of a poor country for sure. I mean, whenever I travel, so a lot of people, when they travel and they become global citizens, which I would consider myself a global citizen. But a lot of these people become global citizens, and they think that when they become a global citizen, that just gives them carte blanche to shit all over the United States and talk poorly about our country. But when I travel, it actually gives me a much deeper appreciation for the United States. I've never I mean, yes, other countries have elements of them that are admirable and unique and sometimes better than the United States, but I've never left the United States and been like, wow, like USA is terrible. I'm always very like I go to other countries and it puts into perspective that we in the United States, we have wealth beyond measure. We truly do. We have wealth beyond measure. We have internet, hot water, drinkable water, infrastructure, nice roads, no garbage, no rubble. All over Egypt, every corner you turn, everywhere you go, there you will see either one of two things. You will either see rubble or you will see ruin, but you will see one of them. There's rubble all over. Side of the road, whatever. It might be busted up concrete, bricks, trash, something. Or ruins. The country is so old and has so much history that there's ruins everywhere. There's stories of they'll like make a cemetery and like they discover some massive tomb of mummies or something like that. Like the whole country is just rubble and ruin everywhere you go. So we have wealth beyond measure here in the United States. And over there in Egypt, people really got to hustle and grind, but there's not enough jobs to go around. And that's another thing I've witnessed as I've traveled. This was true in India as well. But I didn't put it together until this excursion to Egypt. And that is, in capitalist societies, I mean, you could argue that the United States has drifted so far from capitalism that we're something else. And I think that's a fair argument. But for the sake of discussion, we'll say that we're capitalist. In capitalist societies, when the economy is doing poorly, businesses respond by laying people off. That's how they respond. Times are tough, we're going to fire people, unemployment rate goes up. In socialist countries, rather than firing people, they give everyone a job, but they pay them basically nothing. And that is why in Egypt and in India, everywhere you go is overstaffed. You'll walk into a restaurant, there's 10 people inside, only one of them or two of them are a customer. The other 8 are staff. But honestly, that's actually too small. Every restaurant has like 20 people on staff. You've got like 10 servers and there's not enough people. There's not enough people inside for each of them to even have a table. So most of the time they're just hanging out and they're not working. But like they're getting paid, they're just getting paid to hang out, So that was another thing I noticed about Egypt. I know I'm kind of going on all over, but I'm trying to paint a picture of, what the country was like. The private ownership of guns is obviously, not a thing over there. But we went to the pyramids. We went to the pyramids of Giza, and this was very early in the trip. This was like day 1, like day 2, like the day we got there, And we're walking around, and as an American, I'm very trained. My eye is very trained to always look at someone's belt buckle and see if they're open carrying or whatever. And we're at the pyramids, and I see a guy in front of us, jeans, regular t-shirt, but he's got a gun. He's got a pistol on him. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay. We walk by. Our tour guide is showing us around, Mo, our tour guide. And the guy with the gun stops Mo. And I'm like, whoa, this might not go well. Mo shows him some paperwork, and then we go on our way. And Mo gives him a little bit of money. Constantly. I want to discuss that, and then I'll cycle back to what I was about to say. But all throughout Egypt, the whole trip, everybody gets a piece. Everybody gets paid off. You throw them a few EGP here, a few EGP there, 10 here, 20 there, 50 there. Everybody needs a piece. Everybody needs some grease to grease the wheels. It's a culture of bribery, 100%. And the few times that we were on our own without Mo, specifically in Cairo for a few days and in Alexandria, we would have a harder time getting around. But now that I think about it and I look back, it's just because we weren't paying people off. And they don't even care how much you give them. They just want you to give them something. Very interesting part of the culture. So this guy with the handgun was verifying that Mo was a certified tour guide. In Egypt, through the Ministry of Tourism, tour guides have to be licensed. Like, you need a government license to be a tour guide. That is socialism and authoritarianism if I have ever seen it. So strange. And the government over there is weird. They have internal affairs. Any country with a Ministry of Internal Affairs, like that is some secret police shit. Like that name alone is so menacing. MIA. They'll make you MIA. They'll make you missing in action for sure. So the Ministry of Internal Affairs, their whole job is just to like police and spy on the citizenry. The internet over there is like firewalled. Like you look things up and you'll get no results after like 2010 on certain topics. Like if you look up anything related to the government, it'll throw you back to like the early 2010s. It's crazy. And even then, when you try to open a website, it like buffers and loads and it takes forever. And they're just hoping that like you lose patience and like you just close your phone. So, I mean, it was, it's a very, but at the end of the day, like, here, think about this. Dating back thousands of years, the people of Egypt have become accustomed to authoritarian rule, whether it be the pharaohs, the sultans, the Greeks, the Romans, or their current socialist dictatorship, which started, just over 10 years ago. The government has direct ownership and equity within key sectors of the economy, like microchip production, mining, and manufacturing. Legions of highly funded but poorly trained mercenaries roam the streets, moving from city to city across the nation. They are state-sanctioned and therefore operate with complete and total immunity. Their primary function is to black bag those who speak out against the regime. Just a few weeks ago, the secret police shot and killed a woman who was dropping off her kids for daycare. Their reason was because she had the audacity to talk smack to an officer. But under authoritarian rule, that's all it takes. The media is heavily censored, and outlets reported that she was attempting to run the officer over with her car, despite contrary video evidence. Just 10 years ago, the entire citizenry would revolt in outrage over such an abuse of power. But today, after a decade of propaganda, a sizable plurality of the people actually support these actions, which is shocking. Anyways, that's enough of a tangent. Let's get back to Egypt, and I can continue talking about ICE later. Egypt's economy is pretty interesting because they have so many people. They have 120 million people out there in Egypt just walking around in the desert, or farming on the Nile River. They have a GDP per capita, this is so low, of $3,500 per year. So small, right? Like the average person is making 3.5K of economic output per year. Gosh, man. And the population distribution is fascinating because Cairo, the capital city, has like about 25 million people. So that's like 1 out of 5 people live in Cairo. It's pretty dense, But look at this drop off. So their biggest city is Cairo. That's like if you do Cairo and Giza, because they're basically the same city, 25 million. Second largest city, Alexandria, with 6 million. What a cliff. 25 to 6. But then the third largest city is Port Said. Port Said is at the northmost Mediterranean end of the Suez Canal. 600,000 people. So number 1 city, 25 million. Number 2, 6 million. Number 3, 600,000. And then after that, you have a large number of cities that fall in like the 200,000 to 600,000 range. But you've got just such a weird like spread there, and the drop off is crazy. And the poverty really shines through, especially in Alexandria, which was the second location I want to talk about here. So obviously we did Mount Sinai, and then we did Alexandria. Now Alexandria, what's interesting about Alexandria is that it's a complete dump. And before I went to Egypt, I actually thought that this would be the luxurious part of the trip. I planned Alexandria after a tumultuous, physically demanding set of days, thinking that it would be a relaxing stay. The hotels were very expensive. The most expensive hotels we had in Egypt were in Alexandria. You're on the coast, you're on the Mediterranean Sea. They've got the beach, everything. They've got the Corniche. The Corniche is a street. It is a street. It's a concrete street that follows the entire coastline of the city. And all the major landmarks and tourist attractions, there's obviously like 2 or 3 exceptions, but like everything major to do is on that one street. And thank God it is. Because literally 3 blocks inland, you think you're in like Iraq. It's terrible. The salt water from the ocean peels away at the facades of the buildings. So we show up in Alexandria and look around. It looks like a war zone. All the buildings are falling apart. They're like deteriorating. They're like crippling. More rubble, more ruin. See? And the buildings are peeling and the paint's all fucked up. And I'm saying, my God, what is this? But it's the salty air from the ocean. No pollution. The city had perfect air in terms of pollution, like air quality, because you're right there, you're right there on the ocean. Alexandria, what's also weird about the city is nobody works. Nobody's working. Everybody is like fucking around. No one's on the job. We show up, it's a Friday, we're walking around. We go to a restaurant, online it says they open at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. We show up at 11 a.m., no one's there. It's not even open. Lots of places are closed for renovation. Now, I later learned that in Egypt, they have a 6-day work week. And apparently, Friday is like their day off, which is so strange. But even with Friday being the day off, that doesn't excuse how many things were closed on a Friday. And also, we were in Egypt for multiple Fridays, not just one. But Alexandria in particular, nobody's working. The whole city is like shut down. It was weird, just walking around. And we were there for more than one day, and that vibe and that attitude was present even when it wasn't a Friday. But on Friday, it was severe, is what I'm trying to describe. The city is in disrepair. The city of Alexandria was founded by Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great conquered, of Greece. Technically, he was from Macedon. But he conquered Egypt, and then he marched to the Sahara Desert to a place called Siwa, which is another place I went to. And there, in the temple of the sun god, he was made king. So he established this city on the water as he was, going about his travels throughout Egypt. And the city was pretty, I guess, but once again, to be honest with you, I was just happy to get out of there, to be totally honest. Before I talk about Siwa, I would next like to talk about Cairo. Cairo was an interesting city because it, first off, had a lot of pollution. It had more pollution than about half the cities in India that I went to, but less pollution than the other half. Hopefully it's like middle of the road. We were on our first day in Cairo. We go to the Citadel. The Citadel is the highest point in the city. It has a mosque, it has a fortress, and it has the military museum, which I would love to talk about in a moment. And we get to the Citadel, and we're looking out across the city, and there is just a blanket of pollution all across the city. And it was crazy to look at, because even in India, I never had that kind of vantage point on the pollution. It was wild. And anyways, we went to the military museum. The military museum was at this Citadel. And I want to take this time to talk about the relationship between the United States and Egypt on the international stage. Egypt, the United States, we fund that whole operation. We give them a ton of money, tons of money. They're actually the number 2 recipient of foreign aid. They might be number 3 now because Ukraine is number 1. So Israel is usually number 1. Egypt is number 2, and Ukraine's up there now as well. Why do we give so much money to Egypt? Well, we give money to Egypt so they don't attack Israel. We basically bribe them to not attack Israel, which is crazy. They hate Israel. The people of Egypt hate Israelis, hate them. We went to a bookstore, there were tons of books, and the titles of the books were like The Puppet Empire, and how it would have like the Jewish star over the American flag, or like puppet strings. Like, they despise and they hate Jewish people. But they feel that way because historically Israel and Egypt are enemies. They constantly invade each other's lands, Sinai in particular. Um, at different points in history, they've both been ruled by the same empire. I mean, the Romans ruled over Egypt and Israel at the same time. But even in recent history, dating back to the 70s and the 80s, there's been hot wars. The 6 Days War. They don't call it that. Israel calls it the 6 Days War. Egypt, they just call it like the War of 19 whatever, like the year that it happened. In the 6 Days War, Egypt was destroyed by Israel, and Israel took all of Sinai in 6 days. Then a few years later, I think it was maybe 5 to 10 years later, something like that, on October 6th, in the middle of Ramadan. So the Egyptians were starving. They fast during Ramadan. During Ramadan, they blitzkrieged the Israelis, and they took back Sinai in 6 hours, which is crazy. They took the whole thing back in 6 hours. So 6 days, 6 hours. They have a tremendous sense of national pride, but they give us, the Americans, no credit. Here's what I mean by that. I was talking to Mo, and Mo is knowledgeable about his country, or as knowledgeable as a citizen can be given the suppression of information within a authoritarian socialist dictatorship. And I said to him, Mo, did you know that we give you guys a ton of money for your military? He had no idea. I said, did you know that the United States sided with you during the Suez Crisis and were the reason that the British and the French gave Egypt ownership of the Suez Canal? He had no idea. In the museum, they only credit the Soviets. They credit the Soviet Union and the United States with helping, they credit the Soviet Union with helping Egypt during the Suez Crisis. But the truth is, we were there too, and we were more influential because France and England were being rebuilt by us after the war. We were rebuilding them with the Marshall Plan. So they had to listen to us. And it was only when we got involved that they handed over the canal to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians took sovereignty over the canal, right? But that history is totally removed from the military museum. Nowhere in the country is America given credit for how much we have and currently help Egypt. Now, that doesn't mean that they dislike us. There's not a dislike of the United States. People like the people of the United States. Like the tourists, people were never upset to see us. The way a Canadian would get all snotty if they're around an American tourist, there was none of that. But I was expecting it to be I was expecting there to be more civilian knowledge, but the government actively hides that information. And the reason why, in my opinion, is twofold. And this is just my opinion. The first is because we are so heavily allied with Israel, the government doesn't want to give us any credit because they hate Israel. It's their arch nemesis. The second reason is due to the fact that they're a socialist nation, they don't really want to align themselves with us. And when we are so, at least we posture to be so anti-socialist. And I think those two reasons alone probably explain the situation. We went to a museum called the Museum of Alamein. I never know how to pronounce it. Alamein. I think that's how you pronounce it. Basically, Alamein was a battle in World War II, and it was the turning point in Africa, in the African campaign. Up until that point, the Italians and the Germans were conquering all of North Africa. But then at the Battle of Alamein, which was fought in Egypt near the border with Libya, because Libya was an Italian colony, the United States, Britain, and the Egyptians pushed back and defeated the Axis powers. And from that point on, we kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and then we kicked the Axis, we kicked all of them out of North Africa. Major turning point in the war in North Africa. And then that allowed us to stage our invasion of Italy from the south. So we go to a museum. We go to the museum in Alamein. We went there. We drove through, on the way to the Sahara Desert. I'm expecting for lots of fanfare. I'm expecting some fanfare for the United States, right? I mean, of all places, this is where it's got to be. They have a huge wall of all the countries that fought alongside Egypt. All the countries. They got Britain. They got New Zealand. They got Austria. They got one for the Egyptians, obviously. They have one for India. They have one for Canada. And then for the United States, they have a small little paragraph. We don't even get nothing. All the other countries had mementos, military uniforms, reports, and journal entries from the soldiers. We get nothing. We get fuck all. We get a little paragraph. And all they say is, they say this: Egypt opened up its airspace so the United States could fly over the pyramids of Giza to deliver wartime supplies. So even in our paragraph, it's them doing something nice for us. Like, what do you mean? You're about to get taken over and conquered by the freaking Germans. And you did us a favor by opening your airspace above the pyramids of Giza. It was really an insult, and it was in poor taste. Then we go outside, and we're looking at the military vehicles. Okay, we're looking at the military vehicles. It says Canadian truck, the Ford 15. What? I lost it. I said to Mo, have you been here before? Yes, I've been here many times with other tour groups. I said, did you know that Ford is an American company? He said, really? I said, yes. And I'm like, but it says it's Canadian. I was like, I know, that is not true. That is not true. I don't know why it's saying that these Ford military vehicles are Canadian. See what I'm trying to say? They don't give us any credit. And then they showed off one of our tanks, and I forget the name of our tank. It wasn't the Sherman. It was a different tank, not the Sherman tank. The Sherman tank was a very important and pivotal tank for us in the war. But it was a different tank that they're showing off outside. A leftover tank. And on the plaque it says, this is an American tank. It's terrible. And it described like a bunch of flaws with our tank. But then it'll show like some rinky-dinky like cannon or something from Britain, something from like 3,000 years ago. It'll be like, this piece of machinery was pivotal to winning the Battle of Alamein. Like, we get absolutely no crumbs. We get nothing from these people. They give us no credit. At the military museum in Cairo, so now we're back to Cairo, outside at the exit of the museum, there's a bunch of tanks lined up. Bunch of them. There's like 20 tanks, some fighter jets. They're all captured American tanks from the 6 Days War. They're tanks that we sold to Israel, and then Israel fought with those tanks, or excuse me, not the 6 Days War, the War of October 6th, excuse me. They're tanks that Egypt captured from Israel in the War of October 6th, but they're American-made tanks. And all the plaques are like, this American tank was captured without any enemy resistance. Like, they're like shitting on us every corner. Left, right, and center, we get no credit in this country.
It's like a bitter X.
What, I'm sorry?
It's like a bitter X.
Like a bitter X, absolutely. No credit. We get nothing. Even though we fund that whole operation to this day. It was unforgivable. It really was unforgivable. So, when I was in Egypt, I knew it was peak season. I was in Cairo, and I knew it was peak season because I Show Speed, the streamer, and Will Smith were both in Egypt at the same time I was.
Wow.
Now, they went to the pyramids, and around the days that they were in Cairo, we were elsewhere because we didn't spend that much time in Cairo. We mostly went to other destinations, but they were there while I was. So I thought that was pretty cool. And where was it? I think it was the pyramids or something. I know I already talked about how the people of Egypt thought I was Egyptian, but I remember this one interaction. I'm trying to remember where it was, but a guy pulled out a photo of his cousin, and I looked like his identical twin. It was so weird. I had people telling me that I looked more Egyptian than them. That's what I had people telling me. And like Mo, the tour guide, would like translate for us. Mo was great. Let me tell you the story of him really quick. So Mo, we hook up with this guy on the pyramids, like the first day in Egypt. Young guy, super fun. We're having a good time. He's very knowledgeable. He knows his stuff. He's having such a good time with us that at the end of the day, he says, I just texted my boss. I'm going to try to be your tour guide for the entire 2 weeks that you're here. Awesome. That's great for us because we really liked him too. And getting a new tour guide every day or whatever, like that could be lots of variance. So we really got blessed that we had that we got lucky so early. And after spending a lot of time with Mo throughout the trip, spending time with him, you learn a lot about the country. For example, not only do Egyptians hate Israelis, they also hate another group of people, the Shia Muslims. The Shia and Sunni conflict, which we've discussed many times on this podcast. Egypt is a Sunni nation, and the Sunnis are the real Muslims, according to them. And the Shiites are like a cult. That's actually the word he used. They're a cult. That's what he said. He said they cut themselves. They have different prayers. They have a different Quran. Well, that's actually not true. They have the same Quran, but he said they have a different one. They have different prayers. They hurt themselves. They don't follow the lineage of Muhammad. He said they shouldn't even be allowed to go to Mecca and visit the Kaaba. Do you know what the Kaaba is, Professor?
No.
Producer? Jeez, excuse me. The Kaaba is this black box. I know, I said professor on accident because anyway, the Kaaba is this black box in Mecca, okay? And it's supposed to symbolize Muhammad's the Prophet Muhammad, his pilgrimage from Medina to Mecca, which are two cities in modern-day Saudi Arabia. And it's this big black box, Kaaba, the Kaaba. And all day, every day, there's a TV station that you can watch, and thousands of people, you can look it up on YouTube right now, thousands of people are circling the Kaaba. People circle the Kaaba 7 times. I don't know why they do it 7 times. I know 7 is a holy number, but they circle the Kaaba 7 times, chanting their prayers and whatnot. It's really, really interesting to see. And, you know, if you showed most Americans that, they would immediately become, you know, they would think it's like jihadism. Like, they would be very, very worrisome and upset. But they do it all day, every day. And Mo was telling me that he doesn't think Shia Muslims should be allowed to do that. So another huge benefit of the United States is we don't have that kind of like that indoctrination related to our like religion. Like, we have a lot of Christians, but the permeation of Islam throughout their society can feel very oppressive, especially towards women. Like, women are never out alone in public. In Cairo, you would see some of it, but in other places, anywhere outside of Cairo, definitely not. How do I say this? Basically, they're wearing these, like, it's like a garbage bag. What do you call this thing? It's like a shaista? I don't know what you call it. A hijab? Burqa? Something like that. There's different terms, but it's basically like this black bag that they wear over their entire body. So when they walk around, it looks like they're a moving shadow, like you're trying to trace them in the darkness. It is a burqa. Thank you, producer. So the women wear these burqas, and I mean, they get, number one, they probably get hot under there. I know it's wispy cloth or whatever, but it's black and you're in the desert. Like, there's no way you're having a good time under there. So the women of Egypt really don't have a voice. And I guess that's a system they're okay with, or probably not. I don't know. I can't speak for them. But it was very strange. I mean, I saw that in India, but it was rare because, you know, very few people in India are Muslim. But here, it's obviously the whole country, you know? So after a while, it just kind of becomes like, you get used to it, but it was still just very, it was very strange. I'm going to say it was strange. And going back to Muhammad, everybody in Egypt has the same name. If you see a man, his name is probably one of 3 things. 90% of the time, you're going to be right. His name is either Muhammad, Ahmed, or Ahmed. Those are the names. 3 names. Now, you're saying, well, how serious can you really be? In Egypt, we had 5 drivers. 5 drivers that drove us around the country with the tour agency, okay? Not 1, not 2, 3. All 5 were named Ahmed. All 5 drivers. So it got to the point where we would just call them Ahmed 1, Ahmed 2, Ahmed 3. We had 5 drivers, all named Ahmed. And everyone else you interact with is named Muhammad. You've got multiple Muhammads, and they have different ways of spelling Muhammad. It could be M-M-A-D at the end, M-M-E-D, or it might be one M. So you're working with an A or an E, and it might be a single or a double M. But it's pronounced the same way. It's Muhammad. So you walk around and there's like no individual identity. Like everyone has the same name. It's very, very strange. People usually go by nicknames for that reason, because like everyone has the same name. So that's another thing that the United States has on like over Egypt. We've got like a lot of more individual identity and expression than they do over there. Another thing that we have is the United States has the best toilet paper on earth. No one even rivals us, doesn't even come close. A lot of these places, public bathrooms, you go in, no toilet paper. However, as you know about me, whenever I'm traveling, I always have toilet paper on me, always. I'm always stashed. And because of that, I saved not only myself, but our group from many, many crises by always having toilet paper. Like you go into the bathroom, you sit down, you're like, there's nothing. There's no toilet paper. There's not even a hose. At least in India, you could power wash your asshole. In Egypt, there's nothing. They just expect you to get up and go on your merry way. It's crazy. I mean, maybe you could wipe your ass with some sand outside. I have no fucking idea. But, I mean, good thing I was bringing my toilet paper around. So that's another huge advantage we have in the United States. Publicly available toilet paper. Last thing I want to talk about in terms of the museum was the DPRK. Producer, do you know what the DPRK is?
No.
You don't. That's okay. So the DPRK is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Now, whenever a nation has democratic peoples in the name, they're communist. So, as you would expect, the DPRK is North Korea. North Korea. So we enter the museum, this military museum, and there's beautiful, just stunning paintings all over the museum. I'm saying, my God, this is beautiful. We could put this in, we could steal this and put it in the National Museum of Art in Washington, D.C. Beautiful stuff. And I'm looking at the bottom corner, and I'm looking for a name. I'm looking for a signature. Who is this talented artist that made all these paintings? All it says in the corner is DPRK. And I'm like, I tap my friend. I'm like, yo, is that North Korea? Did North Korea make the paintings in this Egyptian military museum? We ask the worker. He speaks English because we're in a tourist area. He says, yeah, they're made by Korea. That's what he says. And I say to him, North Korea or South Korea? And the employee says, oh, I would assume South Korea. But it's North Korea. It's DPRK. And I looked it up online, and it is. It's North Korea. Now, here's what's fascinating about these paintings. They are immaculate. The talent is incredible. The use of color, impeccable. The blotting, the techniques, everything. I mean, I'm really an art connoisseur. I've got experience in this shit. And I'm telling you, these North Korean artists are incredible. And I say to myself, that is probably the closest I'll ever be to interacting with a North Korean. I mean, sure, I could go to the DMZ in South Korea, but to actually witness the art that a North Korean has produced, or something that a North Korean has produced, the artwork was just great. And the themes, all of the paintings, what do we got, producer? What do you got? Let me see.
War paintings.
Oh yeah, you looked them up? Yeah, I know. Isn't it great? It's very, very talented. I'll show you some photos later on my phone. And I think I put one or two on the internet as well. But these paintings are about the history of Egypt and how historically North Egypt and South Egypt were at war. They were enemies, the North and the South, fighting for unification. And despite what you may think, North Egypt is actually in the south of the country. It's called North Egypt because the Nile River flows south to north. So whenever you hear the term North Egypt, it actually means Cairo and everything south of Cairo, because that's upstream and therefore north of the Nile, on the Nile River. South Egypt is the northern part of the country, because I know. Well, I agree. It's really stupid, but South Egypt would be everything north of Cairo. So that'd be Alexandria or Port Said, for example. But but then like Siwa and the Sahara Desert, that would be considered North Egypt, right? So it depends on because it's all in reference to the Nile River. And all throughout history, Egypt was a constant battle between the North and the South and unification of the North and the South. And these paintings were incredible because that's the story of Korea. The story of Korea from a North Korean's perspective is it's about the unification of the North and the South. And that's all they're indoctrinated and all they're taught inside of North Korea. So I thought it was really like ethereal that, all these paintings that they make are, the same. Some things I guess are universal, North versus South. It's a very universal theme. Anyways, in Egypt, we had the privilege of experiencing a sandstorm. So we're walking through the streets. This is the same day we went to the pyramids. Our tour's over. The pyramid tour ended like 1 p.m., 2 p.m. The wind is picking up. Wind's picking up. And we're tired. We're very tired from the pyramids. And also we were jet lagged. But we're hungry, so we need some food. The traffic in Egypt, in Cairo specifically, is insane. It's bonkers. Not as bad as India, because in India, people just drive on whatever side of the road they want. In Egypt, we were only ever driving on the wrong side of the road on highways. Just for fun, I guess, but sometimes half the highway is like a demolition crew, so you really have no choice. And the roads are basically sparse outside of Cairo. I mention all this because a sandstorm kicks up, and the sky, no, forget the sky, the air right in front of you is like basically gray. It's like closer to black than it is to blue. And the sand is fast, and there's garbage on the streets, as I've told you, getting whipped up into like tornadoes, like garbage tornadoes on the street. And I'm wearing glasses to like protect my eyes, but sand and dirt and debris and pollution from the cars, because they don't have catalytic converters, getting in my eyes, getting in my mouth. I learned that I actually like the taste of sand. I like the crunch of it. So the sand is flying into my mouth at like 20 miles per hour, and I'm chewing the sand, getting to work, doing my part. And the sandstorm is just raging on, raging and raging and raging on. And it went all night. It went through the night. Well, we wanted that true Egyptian experience. So we go to a corner store. I think it was called Yummy. Or no, it was called Tasty. That was the name of the restaurant, Tasty. And they serve deep fried chicken sandwiches. So we order some sandwiches, but there's no indoor seating. It's like a stall on the side of the road, So we get some plastic chairs, and we sit down and we eat our food in the sandstorm. And I like the taste of the sand on my food. I like that crunch, that seasoning, But it was a really culturally appropriate experience, and I felt like I was living as one of the people. And as I'm sitting there eating on the street in this sandstorm, the little boys are coming over to us asking for money. They teach them young, how to beg. And there's some street dogs running around, and the little kids are, they have like a wooden pole, and they're like hitting the ground and like agitating the dog. And like the kids are like chasing the dog, and the dog chases them back and they run away. They're just bored. They just want some entertainment, So we just kind of sat there for like 30 to 40 minutes while we ate our chicken sandwiches in the sandstorm and took in the chaos of the city, the raging traffic. Despite all of it, even with the sandstorm, the fruit stands are still open. You got people selling fruit. Life goes on, man. That's just the way of the desert, That's how people live out there. It was incredible. Just, life goes on, and how here in the United States, we're so blessed that we don't have to deal with that. Another thing that I noticed on the news, because whenever I go to another country, I like to watch the news. And specifically, if possible, I like to watch American news. I like to see what other countries are saying about the United States on TV. And what I found fascinating is, despite the fact that Egypt is a military dictatorship, they were openly calling Trump a fascist on TV. It wasn't even a debate. When I was over there, the discussion of us taking Greenland resurfaced at the World Economic Forum or something like that. So more dialogue resurfaced on the United States taking Greenland. And there's really no updates on that except for the fact that we continue to alienate our allies in Europe. But the panel on the news, it was all in Arabic, so I had English subtitles on. It was two sides. One side was a guy taking the side of, yes, the United States should have Greenland. The other side was like a more liberal perspective, and it was, no, the United States should not have Greenland. First off, let's point out how crazy it is that in another country, they're having a discussion on what we should do. Not in a I'm like defensive or I'm annoyed kind of way or what gives them the right. Here in the United States, we would never have a panel discussion on what Egypt should be doing. Americans don't give a fuck about Egypt or any other country. Like, all of our internal discussions on TV are about domestic policy. Or it might be foreign affairs, but we are involved. But this was Egyptians talking about something they have no involvement in. They are not Denmark, they are not even Europe, and they're not the United States. Yet they're having a discussion on who should have Greenland. But even the side in the debate, even the guy, the gentleman who is arguing that we should have Greenland, even he, and it wasn't even controversial, like it wasn't like the other person had to get him to admit it. In his opening remarks, he was like, as a part of fascism and nationalism, it is in the nation's interest to conquer more territory. So like part of his thesis was that like Trump is a fascist and it fits the narrative of modern America to expand our territorial gains. I appreciated the honesty of his argument, but here in the United States, we never, like, it's considered a fringe on the, I mean, I attest that Trump is a fascist, but like on the news, on cable news, even the most ardent liberals aren't necessarily calling Trump a fascist. But over there it was just totally normal. And then on the way home in London, we stopped in London for a day because our flight got canceled. Even in London, calling Trump a fascist. And my friend he took a different flight. He flew through Germany. He connected from Germany to Istanbul, Turkey, and then to Cairo. So his flight route was different. He was sending us like photos of magazines in the countries that he was finding in the airport. Once again, calling Trump a fascist. Like the rest of the world, they're just like, it's no longer controversial to call Trump's regime fascistic. But here in the United States, like, we haven't caught up yet. Isn't that fascinating? And like maybe inside the bubble, it's hard to see what you're going through when you're living through it. But other countries, like, the cat's out of the bag, you know? And even we spoke to an Italian man at a restaurant, an Italian couple. They were great people. They would love to share their food. And this happened in London, and it also happened in Italy. And maybe it's just because I have a very inviting face. You know, maybe I just invite conversation. But I never prompt this, ever. I never prompt a political discussion with a foreign stranger. But in both London and in Egypt, with this Italian couple, they brought up our politics. Once again, proving that, like, we're the top dog. Like, we don't give a fuck about what's going on in Italy, you know? But they really care about what's going on here. And this couple was telling us, three young guys, about the dangers of fascism and that we should study Italian history and learn how fascism permeates and infects a population. And he was saying that he can't believe that the United States has forgotten the terrors of fascism in just like 100 years or just in 80 years. And we had a very, very long, detailed conversation. He did most of the talking. That's okay. I love to listen. I love to see what other foreigners think of us. And he was basically talking to us like we're on the verge of starting some major war and the world like uniting against us. That's like how he was talking, which is crazy to think about. But on the other hand, if you were to ask a German in like 1930s Germany, if they thought the entire developed world was going to unite against them, they would have probably been like, are you insane? Of course that's not going to happen. Why would that happen? See, like I said, you never know how bad things are when you're inside of the house, you know? So it was a really fascinating conversation. We went to this store where they sell papyrus, and it was really cool to learn about how they used to write things down. Because today, any asshole can have a podcast like myself. But back then, only a select few could write down their ideas because very few people were literate and papyrus was very expensive to produce. So I bought some papyrus. I got my brother. Really, my brother purchased it, but like, it's his name and my name written in hieroglyphics, which is really cool. And then I also got the Last Supper. The 12 disciples in the Last Supper. I got a portrait or a painting, whatever word you want to use, of the Last Supper on papyrus. So one day, God willing, if I have a house, I'll frame that and I'll hang it up or something above the kitchen table, because like a good Italian, I'll put the Last Supper above the dinner table. We went to the market, the open air market, and I've now been to enough countries to know that the wealthiest people in every country are always the gold dealers. Always. Everywhere you go, no matter what country it is, you go to the market, and who's the wealthiest person in the market? Who's the guy that's not trying to get your sale? Because all these salesmen are very aggressive. They want you to come into the store. They want you to buy something. Who's the only person who's not aggressive, who doesn't care if you make the sale? The jewelers. The jewelers are always wealthy, and they're not hungry for a sale. Gold is gold. So we went into this store, and they sell 21 karat gold in Egypt. 21 karat. That's nice. That's good shit. India's 22, so we're getting up there. But I'm looking around, and I was looking for a very specific design. I wanted a masculine ring, of course, because I'm a man. Wanted a gold ring, a masculine ring, with the key of life on it. They call it the Ankh, A-N-K-H. It's the key of life. And it's a very classic Egyptian symbol. I wanted to somehow get a masculine ring that had the key of life on it. But I'm looking at all the rings, and they're all feminine. They all look feminine. And I was like, that's a bummer. So you go to a different store. Still all feminine. So we leave, no luck. I mean, I'm not gonna buy something that doesn't look good on me. Come to find out, it's haram for Arabic men to wear gold jewelry. So that's why they didn't have anything masculine in there. Because the women wear the jewelry, but it's haram for men to do it. So that's why they didn't have, so it's 21 karat gold, but that doesn't mean anything to me because it's all for women, So, it wasn't, and even, I remember, even the chains were very thin. I was like, wow, these are thin chains. It's because they're for women. So that was something I didn't know at the time, but after walking away from the situation, it made more sense. So, anyways, let me tell you a little bit about, actually, you know what? I want to first talk about our cab driver in London, and then I'll talk about our locations, and we'll wrap up this Egypt segment. I feel like throughout this segment, I hope that you guys are getting a good idea of the culture and what it's like to be in Egypt. But now I'm going to talk about London for a moment. So on the way home, we got stranded in London. We had 24 hours in London. So my brother and I took the opportunity to explore the city. Really nothing to discuss because the city is super boring and I'll never go back. But I did everything I needed to do, but it's whatever. I mean, it's like a metropolis. It's like if you took Boston and Chicago and merged them together, it's that vibe. But we're walking around. No, excuse me. We're driving. We have an Uber. We take an Uber from the airport to Buckingham Palace. And we get in the car, and our driver's black. No problem. Whatever. We're driving. And he starts asking us, we're learning about him. He speaks multiple languages. And I'm very impressed by that. But then I learned, like, in Europe, everyone knows multiple languages. So in the United States, if you know multiple languages, you're going to be making 300 G's a year. In Europe, if you know 4 languages, you're an Uber driver. Like, that doesn't, because he was an Uber driver and he knew Russian, Turkish, whatever, so it doesn't really mean anything over there. He starts asking us about the United States and he starts trash talking my country. That ain't right. Especially when a British person starts talking smack about the United States. Well, the more he's talking, and as the conversation goes on, he's revealing that he knows a lot about the United States, a very large amount of information. I'm saying, wow, it's so strange. And I'm looking at him in the rear view mirror because I'm in the back seat. I'm looking at him, I'm saying, no, it couldn't be. It couldn't be. And I'm looking at him and I keep looking at him. And in my head, I say, this guy's Somalian. And sure enough, after about 5 to 10 more minutes of talking, he tells me that his family lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Dude, they own a daycare. No, I'm joking. No, but his family lives in Minneapolis. And he's Somali. And he starts talking shit. And at first, I'm like kind of agreeing with him because, like, you know, there's a lot of things I'm unhappy with at the moment. But then he starts to, you know, he's got to pipe down. He's getting a little too loud, a little too ambitious in that conversation. So and then before I know it, I start playing defense. I start repping the United States, you know? And this guy was Somali. His family lives in Minneapolis. He lives in London. He was born in Somalia. What are the odds of that? That I meet an international crook when I'm in London? Who would have thought? Who would have thought that this guy is leeching off of American taxpayer dollars all the way out there in London? And I said, why don't you go visit your family? He says, I can't. It's too dangerous. I said to him in a polite way, I was like, have you thought about moving your family over here to London? And I was trying to do ISIS job for him, you know, but in a polite way. You know, have you thought about relocating your family over here to London? I'm sure they'd be happy to take you. And he said, well, we thought about it, but my brother's in college getting his second master's degree. He doesn't need to get a job, bro. Come on. If you're going to come to the United States and you're not going to speak English, at least get a job. You don't need 2 master's degrees, you know? So it was a gnarly conversation. God bless him. You know, he was a great driver. He did the job. And we gave him a nice tip. And we said farewell. He told us a lot about the city of London. But what are the odds of that? That on my one Uber ride in Europe, my first time in Europe, I touch down, and I've got a Somalian driving my Uber after all the shit that's been going down in Minneapolis. Who would have thought? And I saw it, because when I was looking at him in the mirror, I was like, God, his forehead is gargantuan. I was like, he's got to be Somalian. And sure enough, a few minutes later, he told me he was. It was incredible. I was really proud of myself for spotting that one. Last thing I want to talk about is the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert is truly incredible. Let me first start off by saying I'm pretty sure the Sahara Desert is larger than the United States. So the Sahara Desert encompasses and crosses over something like 10 or 11 different countries in Africa. It is absolutely massive. And we go out to this place. So we go out there. We get this like a buggy, like a Toyota RAV4 or something. We get in the car. We leave the city limits. We're 30 miles from the Libyan border. 30 miles from the failed state of Libya, where we killed Gaddafi under Hillary Clinton's leadership. And we have to sign not us directly, but Mo on our behalf signs our life away. He signs a bunch of forms because once we leave the city walls, technically speaking, there's like Libyan smugglers or whatever. But like I knew we'd be fine. We go out into the desert. How do I even describe this? The wind is powerful. 30-mile-per-hour winds. Okay. The winds are so powerful that you actually hear the wind hitting the car window. And you look out the window and the sand is dancing on the ground in like rhythmic patterns on the ground. The wind is moving the sand. It's incredible. It's beautiful. The dunes are massive. And they go out as far as the eye can see in every direction. The sand dunes are tall, very tall. And it's just a vast, vast desert. The guy in the car is driving. He'll drive up a dune, and then you drive down the dune. It feels like a roller coaster. You think the car is going to flip over. It was insane, man. He's like riding the edge, like when you ride a wave. Like he was riding the crest of the dunes. Oh my goodness. And it actually is incredible how the movement of sand dunes and the shape of a sand dune is so similar to a wave in the ocean. So weird the way they're shaped, and the wind does that, you know? And there's no tides out there, obviously, but the wind shapes the dunes to look like they're waves in the ocean. We're going up and down. It was exhilarating and such a good experience. I'm wearing some linen clothing, like Lawrence of Arabia style. So the wind is so fast that my clothes are like blowing in the wind, you know? Loved it. And eventually I just take off my shoes because they're getting full of sand. If you put your foot on the ground and just keep your foot still, within like 3 or 4 seconds, it's buried in sand by the wind. It's crazy. And you start to sink in the sand. Like, you don't sink. When I say you sink, like, it'll go up to like halfway between your ankle and your knee. That's not nothing. That's pretty deep. But like, you will sink, you know? And we sand surfed down down the sand dunes. We watched sunset. It was so magical. Now, the problem with the experience was it's brutal on the human body, because when this sand hits your face, it gives you like a rug burn. And the sand is very fine, very, very fine sand. So it's getting in your nose, in your mouth. The mouth is fine. I like the taste. But it gets in your nose. It gets in your eyes, you know? And you got to soldier on. I was wearing glasses, but the winds were very powerful, just like the sandstorm back in Cairo. So we had a great time. We were out there. We drank some tea. We went to like a little oasis. We drank some tea. And at one point, we went to the ocean floor. So the Sahara Desert used to be an ocean. And we know this for 2 key reasons. The first is there are some areas where there's no sand, because the way the wind works is there's massive mountains made of sand around you in all directions. So no wind really circulates in between, like in the valley. And therefore the ground isn't sandy, it's hard, like you're walking on marble, okay? And you can see fossilized, calcified seashells on the ground. I took a few home with me. They're on my desk. So that's the first way we know it used to be an ocean. The second way we know is the government drills for fossil water, which is when they pump water out of the ground from under the Sahara Desert. And then they desalinate it, and then people drink it. So it used to be an ocean. Incredible stuff. So we sand surfed, we watched the sunset, we enjoyed the wind, lots of laughs. It was a ton of fun. Egypt was an incredible experience, and I absolutely look forward to going back. So I hope you guys enjoyed this summary or this summation of Egypt. We're going to cut to an ad break, and then we're going to have a few brief segments to wrap up the episode. In a generation where curiosity is killed and education lacks any societal relevance, curious students have turned to alternative sources for their information. Enter YouTube Scholar, a subscription-based education platform where students can become savants in any subject through the crowdsourcing of information. In a library of endless knowledge, students can access a wide variety of topics, ranging from Roman history to physical feats such as horseback archery. YouTube Scholar is empowering America's next generation of multilinguists, engineers, and business professionals. So why listen to a few teachers when you can have access to the best on earth? YouTube Scholar, where education is engaging. Thank you to our sponsor, YouTube Scholar. I want to personally thank them. Unlike most of our products, YouTube Scholar is something that I've been using for decades. It's really made me the person I am today. And without YouTube Scholar, you would not be listening to the No Good News podcast. I want to talk about, some brief personal asides of things that I witnessed in the new year before we move on to some domestic policy. I want to talk about New Year's Day. Specifically my experience, because this has now happened to me 2 years in a row, and debatably 3. So I go to this New Year's party, and the inside of the house looks like a Spanish castle. I mean, this thing is huge. The house is just gargantuan. It's stunning. Columns, spiral staircases, basement that's so big that rooms go untouched for years at a time. The kids are downstairs in the basement, and the adults are upstairs. Downstairs with the kids, it's like a 50-person rager. Everybody's getting blasted. These kids are like 16, but all the parents are okay with it, That's how it goes up there in Jersey, And upstairs is about 20 adults in their late 40s to early 50s pretending that they're at a rager. Key distinction there. And then there's me. And then there's me, because I'm not, I'm kind of a, when I'm up north, I kind of hibernate, and I'm kind of a recluse. So I don't really got a crew that's my age. But these guys in their late 40s, they're nice. They took me under their wing, and it goes well. Anyways, I went because it's important that like I get out and socialize. I didn't want to just stay inside and let the ball drop or whatever. Anyways, all the adults are paired up and married, with the exception of one. This girl is Portuguese, okay? But like all the girls in Jersey, she wants to be one of us, a paisan, So she's real problematic because every time I see her, she's dressed like a guma, always. She's really exposed clothing. She dresses like a corner girl. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous, and really, it's not classy. It's a problem. It's definitely a problem. But there's no single men at the party, except for me. But like, obviously, she's old. Like, she's got like 3 kids. So, why is she dressing like that? There's no single men in this house for her to catch the eye of. So, she's being, she knows what she's doing. It's a, how do I explain this? She's basically, she wants the married men at the party to stare. You understand? That's what she wants. But that's fucked up because the other women at the party are her friends. And all the women know that she does this. But like, no one really says anything to her. And like, the husbands make comments. Like, it's just like super weird all around. And like, her kids are there and they come upstairs and like, they see how she's dressing. Like, it's just terrible. Like, I mean, you feel bad for the kids. I mean, she insists on being in the front of every group photo. And her tits are out and she like leans forward to show them off. It's so cringe. Like, grow up, please. Like, this is such juvenile behavior. And gosh, I mean, and I have to bring this up because this is the kind of behavior that's tolerated in New Jersey. And that's why I don't think I can live there. Because I see things like this and I'm like, this is despicable. I can't be a part of this. It gives me agita just thinking about it right now. So I have to get out, and that's why I can only be there for so long. Because after dealing with this kind of behavior from everybody, it just becomes too much for the mind to handle, Anyways, I mean, this is the tri-state area, it does something to the mind. It poisons you. I don't know what's going on up there. I have no idea. Anyways, I got another really quick story about this other guy I know. So up in Jersey, there's this guy. He's a real character, but I guess in that area, who isn't? His name is Anthony Ficino, and he's got a beautiful wife. Her name is Janice. Great woman. So it's Anthony and Janice. Now, I've spent many an evening with the Ficinos, and like all the upstanding Italians that I know, they enjoy a nice meal. But the problem is, I have never once seen Mr. Ficino pleased with his meal. Not a single time. Never once. Always with the complaining. On a recent occasion, in a single meal, in one meal, I personally observed him complain about the prosciutto, the scungio, the margarita pizza, and the sangria. In one meal. So he didn't like a single aspect of it. Now, I used to think it was in his nature to just complain. But I finally put it together. I finally figured it out. It's the source of every man's joys and every man's sorrows. It's his wife. You see, Janice is the best cook in North Jersey. She makes the best food. Anything she cooks is so heavenly that I do my best to get myself invited over to their house for dinner. I'm constantly trying to angle for a night at Janice's, because no matter what she puts in front of me, it's going to fill me up for like the next 24 to 48 hours, and it's just going to be immaculate, okay? But her food is so delectable that it has ruined eating out for her husband. He simply can't enjoy himself because he has a catalog of chef's choice meals vested in his wife. I mean, talk about suffering from success. My God, a man can dream. So that's kind of that's the spectrum of the people that you deal with up there in Jersey. You've got some people who are like really superficial, but you've got some really nice down-to-earth Italians who cook incredible food, you know? So the culture up there is totally different. It's like another country, honestly. Anyways, let's move on to some domestic policy. And speaking of other countries, Trump is officially the first president to bomb 7 countries in 1 year. So here we go. And now, when I say 7 countries, these are countries that we are not at war with. So he's the first country to bomb 7. He's the first president to bomb 7 countries with that we are not at war with. So here are the 7. And viewers, let's play along. Let's see how many of these you can get right. Here we go. Number 1, Somalia. That made the news for a little bit. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to that one. Iraq. That's a constant, right? So there's nothing new there. We won't really give him that much credit on that one. Yemen. Also pretty standard. We like that, you know. Very typical. I mean, the Yemenis kind of deserve it, so we'll allow it. They're pirates and all sorts of bullshit. And they're giving Israel a hard time, so we got to get in there and crack some skulls. Next up is Iran. We bombed Iran. I'm sure everybody remembers that one. That was major news, and then it kind of withered away, but I don't know. Diplomacy has been breaking down. I don't know. We might be going back into Iran, you know? Born too late, born too early. It's always time to bomb the Middle East. So who knows? Iran's a pretty unique one. We're going to give Trump some bonus points on that one. That's a bonus points for individuality and rarity. Next up, we got Syria. Syria, that's pretty typical. That's, you know, just another Tuesday for the United States. Next up, Nigeria. That was pretty big news. It kind of slipped under the radar here, but yeah, we did some bombing in Nigeria because apparently they're oppressing their Christian minority. There's the Christian minority in Nigeria. They're suffering from oppression. So how do we solve that oppression? Do we give them visas? Do we bring them over? No, of course not. We bomb the country. That's how we do things, baby. And then next is Venezuela, obviously. So, and we're going to get to Venezuela pretty soon. But yeah, Trump is the first president to bomb 7 countries in 1 year when 7 countries we're not technically at war with. I want to talk about ICE for a minute. I mixed up my segments earlier, and I accidentally talked about them before I was intending to. But, you know, what's going on here is on January the 7th, ICE killed an innocent woman in Minnesota. And the government, the feds, are lying and saying that the agent was, quote, lucky to survive. But if you watch the video evidence, it's obvious that the woman turned her wheel hard to the right and that she wasn't going to hit him. He, in fact, backed up with the vehicle, kind of tracking it, and shot her multiple times. The officer then fled the scene and apparently went to the hospital. But from all accounts, the guy suffered no injuries, which is obvious because in the video, he's not even touched. You know, so, I mean, they're just out of control. They're just out of control. The secret police is out of control. But I don't know. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time talking about ICE because things are only going to get worse. And once they get worse, then I'll talk about them some more. This episode's already going on pretty long. And so much chaos happens in this country that there's just not enough time for everything. We're going to take a quick ad break because I need to drink some water. And when we come back, we will be discussing, I guess, you know what? Let's do it. Why not? We'll talk about my favorite thing in the world, gold and silver. See you guys in a minute. In a society where all hope is lost and even drugs are no longer capable of numbing the masses, one company has stepped up to harness the untapped potential of our youth. Kalshi is a new, innovative platform where American citizens can gamble on the outcome of any event. Put your money where your mouth is and gamble on crowd favorites like the outcome of a football game to major world events like when the USA will bomb Iran. If you are still on the fence, tune in to CNN, the most trusted name in news, to get real-time updates on how Americans are feeling about elections, the economy, and social causes. When money is on the line, people speak their mind. Kalshi. Welcome back. And we have major news in the gold and silver markets. Unfortunately, when I left you guys last time, I forget what the prices were, but I believe silver was about $50 an ounce. approximately, and gold was 4,300. Am I right on that, producer? Thank you. And I mentioned in my closing remarks that what the United States needed, what we desperately needed, was for gold and silver to either go down in price or at the very least to not increase. Unfortunately, the exact opposite happened. As of right now, gold is sitting at almost $5,000 an ounce flat. We're at 4,967. And silver is sitting at $78, $77.94. So we've seen major increases in both metals since the last episode. Now, we actually got to higher numbers. When I was in Egypt, I was waking up and every morning the numbers were just getting outrageous. On the 23rd of January, silver crossed $100 an ounce and gold was 4,980. So gold has reverted back to where it was on the 23rd of January. But silver had a major run and it went high. I think it got upwards of $112. I usually take notes on this, guys. I usually take notes on when there's a major price development on XYZ date, but it was just moving so fast that I couldn't even keep track of it. At one point, gold surpassed $5,500. And at one point, silver surpassed $115. There you go. Yeah, silver surpassed $115, and gold was up there at $5,500. Now, we've reverted back to our current levels, but we're still way higher than we were just at the last episode. Now, this pullback was just because, whenever something rises to such meteoric highs in such a short amount of time, there's always going to be some profit taking and some pullback. But the fact that gold is now basically just hugging 5,000 an ounce and hasn't reverted back down to 4,300 clearly shows that it's possible the market is yet again establishing a new baseline of around $5,000. The Federal Reserve and the U.S. government have to get their act together. They have to start behaving. The markets are sending a clear signal that faith in the dollar is being rapidly deteriorated. I mean, guys, I feel like it was just yesterday when gold was $3,000. Now it's $5,000. I mean, the numbers are just absurd. I really never thought that the collapse of the dollar would happen this quickly. A few days ago, it might have been a week ago now, the US dollar hit an all-time low against the Swiss franc, which is once again further signaling its weakness. The dollar is now trading at weaker, the dollar is just so weak against the euro, against the British pound. It's weak against all these other currencies, even other countries that we historically have stronger currency swaps with. The swap is becoming less strong, so the exchange rates are decreasing. The dollar's tanking. There was one day I was in Egypt, so I forget the exact date, but it was sometime in earlier, mid-January. The dollar fell by 2% in one day. That's a major move. That's a major move for one day. As of January 1st, China has announced that they are controlling silver exports. Now that's a problem because they do 60% of global silver refining. And now they are limiting their exports. The technicalities on it are only I think it's 50, or might be less than 50. I'll say it's 50. I think it's less though. Only 50 companies are permitted to export silver, and they can only export silver after they produce a significant, the first massive chunk of silver they produce. I used to know the number in my head. The first massive chunk that they produce has to stay inside of China. And only then, after they hit that amount of production, can they start exporting. And the number of exporters that are even allowed is very small. And because the United States mainly operates in paper silver, which is contracts, whereas Asia is the producer of solar panels and car batteries and all that, China operates with physical silver prices, whereas the United States operates with paper prices. And because of that, we had some insane deltas. On January 1st of this year, Silver was $130 in Tokyo, 80 in China, and 71 in the USA. I mean, that kind of price variance across the world should not happen. Okay, and I did take notes. I knew it. China has limited exports of silver to 44 companies and requires that these 44 companies keep the first 80 tons of silver that they produce inside of Chinese borders. So those are the exact specifics. I mean, the United States is just making so many tactical errors, and it upsets me as an armchair economist to sit here and see all of these mistakes being made. So annoying. Physical shops. So in the United States, if you go to a store and you try to buy silver, silver is currently selling 25% above spot. 25%. The fees are outrageous. And that's because the physical silver, there's no more of it. We're running out. And, Jerome Powell was asked if he's concerned. He was asked in his, for his FOMC, he goes on TV and he gives a report every few months. And the journalist says to him, "Are you concerned about the increase of gold and silver prices?" And Powell says, "Absolutely not. The gold and silver prices have nothing to do with the U.S. economy." How could he say such a thing? How can the chief economist in the United States be filled with such arrogance and such a lack of knowledge on economics? I mean, you could argue that he's lying to the public, but in the way that he said it, that wasn't the impression I got. He said that without stammering, almost like it was a dumb question, and the person that was asking shouldn't have been asking in the first place. Just pitiful. We've got a great quote here from Ray Dalio. Every once in a while, I come across a nice quote that I like to share with you guys. So here's this one. Quote, "If you don't own gold, you know neither history nor economics." It's a nice, short, and concise quote from Ray Dalio, one of the smartest economists on earth. And he believes in sound money, and Ray is right. As a student of history, I tend to agree with his opinion. I don't know. I mean, the whole Venezuela angle also ties in to silver specifically, because we invaded Venezuela early in the year, and then just a day later, literally one day later, on January the 4th, JP Morgan spent $8 billion. They committed $8 billion to build a silver smelting and refining facility in Tennessee, which will be owned 40% by the U.S. government. This facility is going to smelt up to $700 billion worth of silver a year that Venezuela has not mined from the Arco Minero region, which is the largest silver mine in Venezuela. So clearly, Trump told JP Morgan that we would be invading Venezuela, because once we invade, within 48 hours, they announced that they're going to be opening a refinery, and 40% of this refinery will be owned by the U.S. government. If successful, when I say successful, I mean if somehow we extract these minerals from Venezuela, because the situation over there is very tenuous. But whatever. This silver would allow JP Morgan to once again have major control over the global silver market, and they would suppress prices if they're successful. So we'll see how that goes. Also, all of this socialism nowadays. We got the government owning equity in NVIDIA. We got the government owning equity now in mining, in silver mining, like in silver mines. Now they're doing heavy involvement in the car companies. Whatever happened to the Republican Party being the party of capitalism? I mean, just so exhausting, so discouraging to see. Anyways, I know that I just want to make that a quick segment, give you guys some updates. Gold and silver on a wild ride. I'm hoping that we hang out here at this level, and really the country needs the prices to go down. We need gold to go back down. $5,000 gold is outrageous, and that's a terrible way to start the year for the U.S. dollar. I mean, geez. But now you've got JP Morgan. JP Morgan is projecting that gold is going to be $6,800 by the end of the year. That was their recent projection. I mean, that's outrageous. God, they're making such terrible mistakes. The country, I mean, they're debasing our currency. It's brutal. All right, guys, let's cut to an ad break before I fall into a deep depression and close out the episode. The intersection of form meets function has finally entered the apparel space. After decades of monotony and repetition, Nike has broke the athleisure market wide open with our newest clothing line, Nike Tech. Our newest patented aerodynamic designs are perfect for a run, hike, safe house hangout, or hostage extraction. At Nike, we serve a global market because every race, ethnicity, and creed deserves to rep the latest tech. In support of this mission, we've partnered with celebrities all over the world who each have a custom fit. The first in our series is Midnight Maduro, which features our gray and black homeware collection. Find it at a Target near you. So I'm in Jersey, and I wake up to drive south down to Carolina. And it's the morning, I'm ready to go. I'm amped up, ready for the 11-hour drive. And Uncle Mike comes down. We have a ritual where we eat breakfast together one last time before we say goodbye. It's very nice. I always enjoy it. And he comes downstairs kind of groggy, kind of sleepy. And he says to me, the first thing he says to me, he doesn't say good morning. He says, Nick, deep in the night, we bombed Venezuela. This was January 3rd. That's what he says to me. Deep in the night, we bombed Venezuela. What do you know about that? I said, well, given that it happened deep in the night and I just woke up, I have no idea what you're talking about. But I'll look into it when I'm driving. Now, his primary concern was that his trip to Aruba would be canceled in February. Classic Americana right there. Not that we just went to war with another nation or who knows what's going to happen, global instability, will there be retaliation or blowback? He just wants to know that his vacation to Aruba, the small island 100 miles north of Venezuela, won't be disrupted. And so then I get in the car. I'm like, wow, what's going on? What happened? We bombed Venezuela. So I turn on YouTube. And Trump announces that Maduro has been captured and he's being sent back to the United States. Can you imagine the fear of these Venezuelans? They have no idea what they are up against. It's the first business day of the year. The year just started. Business day 1, in business at my company, every month we have certain goals and we say, this is due by business day 5. This is due by business day 6. Business day 1 of the month, we've captured Maduro. I mean, they can't even imagine. They don't even know what they're up against, these Venezuelans. Their imagination can't even fathom our capacity. The soldiers of Venezuela are like a street criminal facing Batman. They have no idea what we are capable of. But the spice must flow, and we need oil. So sure enough, we just take Maduro. I mean, this operation is going to be a great movie in 20 years. In 20 years, this could be better than Zero Dark 30. It really could, when we got Osama. I'm very excited for the movie. I'm hoping that Trump fast-tracks this movie. Maybe that's something he could do. That's one thing I would enjoy him doing. Apparently, according to the CIA, we had an informant flip, and they gave up Maduro's location. Trump then announced, I think it might have been the vice president, but we'll never know. Maybe we will, but we don't know yet. Trump then announces that we are going to run the country, but the Venezuelan government is still in power. And it's now been over a month since this happened, and nothing's actually changed. I mean, the Venezuelan government and the people are protesting our intervention, and all we got was Maduro. But we haven't secured any oil rights. The American oil companies are refusing to go in. The American oil companies, the executives literally told Trump, it's too politically unstable. We're not going in. So, this is not going the way Trump thought it would. But of course it wouldn't. Because, just because you decapitate the head of the Hydra doesn't mean that all of a sudden you run the show. I don't know why he had such a juvenile understanding of what it would take over Venezuela. I do want to read a quote. This quote was leaked to the press and published in American news. Now, could this be fake? Absolutely. I mean, the United States government is notorious for leaking fake interviews from foreign soldiers for the purposes of propaganda. But nevertheless, we do have pretty good reason to believe that this report is actually a true statement. Okay, quote, "They launched something. I don't know how to describe it. It was like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly, I felt like my head was exploding from the inside. We all started bleeding from the nose. Some were throwing up blood. We fell to the ground, unable to move. Those 20 men, without a single casualty, killed hundreds of us with no resistance. We had no way to compete with their technology or weapons. We couldn't even stand after that sonic weapon or whatever it was." What a insane quote from a Venezuelan soldier who survived the raid. So we learn a lot here. Now, once it happened, I was talking to my friends the same day, and I literally said to my friends, I was like, at most we sent in a few teams. Like, this is a special forces extraction operation. I'd be shocked if we even sent in 30 people. So according to this guy, we sent in 20, but he's probably ballparking it. It was probably less than 20. It was probably like 12, like 2 teams of 6 or something. Now, according to this soldier, the United States military is now in possession of a sonic weapon that induces headaches, nosebleeds, and the vomiting of blood, such that you fall to the ground and are unable to move. Insane. Now, once again, it could be a fake story, but then Trump was on TV just a few days ago, and he actually named the weapon the Discombobulator. Great name. No, I like this one. This is good. I like it. It's comical. It's a joke. I like it. It makes light of a weapon that is clearly overpowered. I mean, how does this thing even work? I'm sure it's not something you point and aim. Is it like from a satellite or something? But if so, how do our soldiers have immunity to it? I have so many questions. And of course, that's the intent. The intent is to confuse and, give intrigue and leave the enemy in fear. But I was wondering how we were able to raid a massively protected bunker, defended by Cuban special forces, because the Venezuelan bunker was defended by Cuban special forces, So how did we do that? Well, apparently we discombobulated them, That's clearly what we did. When I was in Egypt, I read a quote. It was an ancient manuscript, and the manuscript read this quote. It says, and what I also loved about this quote was this quote was hundreds of years old. Okay, very old quote. And here's how it starts: "Since ancient times," I find that funny because we would consider this guy ancient, but even to him, he says this: "Since ancient times, men had to defend themselves against predators and other men who coveted what they had." Very basic quote, but very powerful. This quote was said by an Egyptian in reference to the Nile River. But when I read this quote in Egypt, it made me think of the oil in Venezuela. We, the United States, we covet what they have. We covet their oil and their natural resources. The operation was effortless. I mean, we'll get into the larger geopolitical ramifications in a moment, but let's just take a moment first to glaze the efficiency and power of our military. I mean, we had every plane involved. Not a single piece of equipment was destroyed or damaged, and that's important because the anti-air, we'll call it machinery, the anti-air weaponry in Venezuela is made by China. It's Chinese built, and it wasn't even able to shoot down a single one of our helicopters or planes or anything. Now that was a powerful signal because that tells the rest of the world and our enemies who are looking to buy this Chinese equipment that they can't do nothing to our planes. So that's awesome. As a person that is very, very concerned that a hot war with China is on the way, Learning that Chinese air defenses couldn't shoot down even the oldest of our planes, like an F-16, is very encouraging. Now, once again, this could all be propaganda. I wasn't there. For all we know, we just paid off the military and they didn't show up that day to work. Or the CIA was there in advance and they disabled all the air defenses. Who knows how it went down? But that story is encouraging to hear. That's very nice. We go in, we got probably 12 guys, if I had to guess. According to the interviewer, or the soldier, it was no more than 20. We send them in, we capture Maduro wearing his Nike Tech clothing in the middle of the night. We get him and his wife, we throw him on a helicopter, then we put him back on an aircraft carrier, and then we ship him on a plane back to New York City for these fake drug charges that we're hitting him with. The charges are completely made up. And it's just like, and everyone knows it is. Even on the news, like all the Republicans are just talking about the oil. No one actually cares that Maduro is, quote, an international drug kingpin, because he's not. He's a communist, but we just had to make up some bullshit reason to arrest him. But even still, even if he is a criminal, that does not give us the right to unilaterally invade and arrest him. Many countries would consider what we have done to them criminal behavior, and they would be correct. But that doesn't give them the right to invade our country in the dead of night and kidnap our president or our dictator, if Trump was a dictator. Like, kidnap our leader is the word I'll use. So the whole thing is like, it's obviously just because we did it because we can. And it's pretty much that simple. On the way out, we bombed and destroyed Hugo Chavez's grave for no reason, so just for fun, which is actually pretty cool. It's pretty based. So we lit that shit up on the way out, which I kind of like. I'm a fan of that. I like that a lot. And our goal with this attack was to not only gain a foothold in Venezuela and to kick out the Chinese, because the Chinese were cutting they were in the process. The delegates were already there, and they were cutting a major trade deal with Venezuela. And we're like, yeah, that ain't gonna happen. And then we just invaded and we took Maduro. So not only have we eliminated Chinese influence in the country, but at the same time, the United States is thinking that the vice president will be easier to control and we can get like drilling or mining rights. Once again, no news to come out of that. And my dad said to me that he was very happy that it's over now. But what I was trying to explain to him is that this is just the beginning, not the end. This is the beginning of the conflict, or this is the beginning of our entanglement, if we were to call it that, with Venezuela. Things are, there's still a long way to go. But we also wanted to hurt peer adversaries. Like, we wanted to hurt China. We wanted to hurt Russia, which this attack did. Every time our adversaries lose a puppet nation, that hurts them in the same way that losing Syria hurt them, for example, or Lebanon. It also hurts Cuba. Cuba relies on Venezuelan oil. So now they are in trouble. And it is Marco Rubio's dream to topple Cuba. In fact, it was Marco Rubio's father. It was his dying wish, his father's dying wish, that Marco liberates Cuba. And we know this because Marco wrote it in his book. That on his father's deathbed, he wished for Marco to liberate Cuba, which is an insane thing to wish of your son. That's crazy. China needs the oil, and it's 10%. China gets 10% of their oil from Venezuela, so that ain't happening anymore. So yikes. And Cuba gets almost all of their oil from Venezuela. Since this crisis, two key things have happened. The first is Cuba is now getting oil from Mexico. Despite the United States telling Mexico to not give oil to Cuba, Mexico said, no, fuck you, and they're doing it anyways. So problematic. So now the only way to starve Cuba of oil is to literally blockade Cuba. They were hoping that just by blockading Venezuela, that would get the job done. But now Mexico is shipping oil there. So we're either going to have to be in conflict with Mexico, give up, or blockade Cuba. We'll see how that goes. And it also came to our attention that China was buying oil from Venezuela not in dollars. They were buying it in yuan, in their own currency. And once you threaten the petrodollar system, your days are numbered. Just ask Saddam or Gaddafi. So once again, the trend continues to be true. When you transact oil and you're not doing it in American dollars, we will come for you. We will come for you. Because the American empire rests on the implicit demand of trading oil in US dollars. I mean, so far it's been a month, and given that we've heard no news, I'm pretty sure that this is not going the way Trump wanted to. But, like, that's no surprise, because Trump's and his foreign policy is terrible, and we're a failing empire, clinging to the strategies of the past. Like, can our playbook save us from failing? Like, our playbook has failed us at every turn. So do we really expect it to, like, work now? Or, like, we're just walking into, like, Thucydides' trap. You know, Thucydides was a philosopher, and he basically said that the failing empire will take larger and larger desperate action to hold on to their power. Like, that's really what this comes off to me as. Especially because invading Venezuela was unnecessary. Maduro actually, prior to our invasion, Maduro offered to give us drilling rights, which many people are unaware of. He offered us drilling rights, and we turned him down just to invade, and now we haven't secured those rights. So tactically speaking, we've made a huge mistake. I mean, in addition to that, there's so many different angles, but now, like, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is now more justified from Russia's perspective because they can point to what we did in Venezuela. And who knows, maybe China will use our actions to justify an invasion of Taiwan, right? These are other factors that, like, our leaders have not considered. And the way we have dealt with Venezuela shows why the United States can never be a true empire. And it proves that our 150 years of being an empire is a bug and not a feature. It's an accidental success. The American people and government lack the will and courage to truly subjugate another people. This is why we cling for reasons to invade. We rebuild the countries that we destroy, and we attempt to spread democracy and use these excuses to justify our actions. Other empires such as Russia, China, and the Europe of old did not have these illusions, and the citizenry of these countries were happy to subjugate foreign peoples for their own benefit. But that's never been America's philosophy. So we've always had to take half measures, and that is why our empire has ultimately failed. America lacks the courage to truly control another set of people, which is why its empire has always been unprofitable. And rather than creating wealth for all of its people, our empire has actually bankrupted us through national debt, inflation, endless wars, and sour international relations. Our empire is now overextended. We're fighting wars on too many fronts: Israel, Ukraine, Yemen, and now Venezuela. Maybe Iran in the near future. Now is the perfect time for China to strike Taiwan. The only way that it could get better for them is if we were to engage in attacking Iran. Then we would be so overextended that I don't even think we could defend the island. Speaking of Iran, they exploded into protests. This also happened when I was in Egypt. The Iranian government killed 30,000 people in 2 days. 30,000 of their own citizens in 2 days for protesting. Thousands and thousands of protesters took to the streets. They're tired of Sharia law, and they're tired of Islamic rule. But unfortunately, the protests were shut down, which has happened so many times throughout Iran's history. And this is just yet another example, So we wish the people of Iran well. It'd be much easier for us if they were to revolt and then stand up. We wouldn't have to go to war with the Ayatollah. But it's really unfortunate that the people are oppressed, and it's another classic reason of why the citizenry of the United States should always have the Second Amendment. It should always be armed, because our government has become a lot more oppressive, but part of me hopes that our people would take up arms and resist if things were to get as bad as they are for the Iranian people. So, on that pro-Second Amendment message, we'll close out this lovely episode. I really appreciate you guys spending time with me as always. Hope you learned something new, had a good time, and I hope you're able to sit back and relax and enjoy this one. I'm going to come back to you guys with another episode. I'm hoping I can get to you in late March. Sometime in March is what I'm hoping. So maybe a 1-month hiatus, but we'll see how it goes. Work is picking up and I got some studies to do, but don't worry, I won't forget about you guys. Goodbye now.